So welcome. This is the June 10th virtual meetup of the Coast Division of the NMRA-PCR. So we're going to have a discussion today. I have four topics. So we'll go ahead and cover a couple of those right here at the beginning. The first, a little bit about the event that we're doing next week, so a week from today. An announcement of an event on September 24th. This will be the same as we did last year at the South Bay Railroad Historical Society. Did want to talk a bit about the convention, just to update it, make sure everyone's aware, and then do some coast modeling. So first things first, next Saturday, I assume everybody's kind of heard of this. I've been through it in a few of the coast extras. We have we are essentially redoing what we were trying to do in March, and the storm blew it out. So this will be a Saturday start about 8:30 with the steam up. Watch the steam up at 11 o'clock. We have a shop tour. There's a noon train, and there are tickets in the document. I'll show you in a second. There's a way to get a discount on the train tickets. I know some folks have already bought tickets for the train. The one thing that I am still trying to confirm, and if anyone knows, help me please. Originally, my understanding was that the large scale guys or the live steamers were going to be set up at Roaring Camp that day. Then I heard they understood they weren't. Now I understand they actually are. So, I'm looking to confirm that, and also looking for a contact, because if they are going to be there, what I was going to ask them to do is see if they could do something like at 10 o'clock for a steam demonstration, or steam up demonstration for live steam. Thought that might be fun to do during that hour we have between the steam up in the morning and the shop tour in the afternoon at 11 o'clock. So what I wanted to do here was I actually wanted to pull this up. This is essentially the what's up on the web. So if you click on the link that was in the email, these are the layouts that are open. And if you haven't seen these, clearly, Guy Cantwell's layout, which is an HO scale layout. Dave Lovelace, also HO, a little bit farther south. Dave does a lot of operating sessions, has a really cool helix that you can kind of stand and look down into. That's a decreasing radius as you go down the helix. John Lavelle, a Southern Pacific layout, really a cool layout, a lot of detail, a lot of neat detail in it. Wayne McMillan, again, an amazing layout, a lot of interesting details and track work. Then Mike Musil, if you haven't seen Mike's layout, it's a really nice ON30 layout, or ON3 layout, excuse me. And then finally, the Monterey and Salinas Valley Model Railroading Historical Society, which is a club in the area. So we'll have all of those layouts will be open. I'll put the link to this in the chat. This is up on the web. This is information about the event. This is how to buy the tickets and get the discount, et cetera, et cetera. So that will be essentially our the set of events on the 17th. Any comments, questions, thoughts on that?
Looking forward to it.
Cool. I think it's going to be a fun event. I think it'll be fun to do. I wish we could have done it back in March, but I think it'll be a fun event now. So looking forward to hopefully seeing everyone there. And for me, it's the second day of the Alameda Fair. So I told everybody I'm going to miss it. So anyway, let's continue on. The other thing I wanted and this is just now really a placeholder for everyone to put on their calendars. We have set up with the Santa Clara Depot folks, the South Bay Railroad Historical Society, to essentially use their facility on September 24th. So this will be basically the same as the event we did last year. They have a large space and a smaller space. We're going to try to recruit to do some clinics. So if anyone has any interest whatsoever in doing a clinic, please contact David. Great facility. The big room is a great facility for doing like a PowerPoint presentation, kind of anything you would normally do in that type of a clinic. The smaller room is kind of a boardroom table, and we did 2 clinics there last time. One was a clinic on
Soldering.
soldering, and one was a clinic on using Tinkercad. Would like to do something similar. I may, if there's interest, do the one that I've done on PowerPoint on how to use PowerPoint and modeling. Would be interested in someone else doing some similar kind of hands-on type of clinic that you can do in a smaller space. So that'll be great. September 24th, mark your calendars. For the South Bay members, we'll be actually trying to set up some open layout tours for that day as well. Probably not as many as we did last year. Try to get it down to maybe 4 or 5. I think that's probably the right number for this kind of event where people can really see them. So that's any questions on September 24th or so the last thing I really just wanted to talk about was, the Tech Line convention is set up. Earl's here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. We did that a couple of weeks ago when we got together. Going to be an exciting convention, April 24th to 28th. While we've got conventions up, I would like to just make a plug that if you have been thinking about going to the national convention, which is in Texas in August, it's probably not a bad idea to register. My understanding is that they are having some pretty significant challenges in registration numbers. So if you're interested in going, probably better to register earlier so they get some ideas about who's actually thinking about coming. So that was really about all I had. And I think with that, we can just jump to modeling and what we're doing. Any comments on any of those topics?
I think you also have a convention coming up for the large scale Garden Railway folks here in our area.
That's true. There's a Garden Railway convention, I think in early July. I don't know the exact dates. Someone may know.
Long pause.
Long pause.
Well,
we didn't catch the Garden Railroaders today, eh?
No.
So yeah, there is a Garden Railroad convention, which by the way, if you're Garden Railroad curious, is probably a great way. I mean, I understand they have like 50 Garden Railroad layouts open or some huge number of layouts open. So if you're interested in garden railroading, that's probably a great way to go experience it and maybe can convince your gardening skills are not up to snuff. Yeah,
this is to do with the Garden Railway, but Phil, just to let you know, thanks for getting that together in September. I think it's great that we're trying to schedule that kind of stuff. So I'll put it on my calendar, see if I can make it down.
Cool. Yeah, no, I think it'll be fun. It's nice on a Sunday. It's not a bad drive to get down there from most places.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so if there's, I'm blowing it here. I missed my catch. So for those that are interested, this is the Garden Railway Convention is July 1st to 8th at the Hyatt Regency in Santa Clara and the Convention Center. So that's basically same place Oatscale West was, except it's actually in the Convention Center. It's, as I understand it, it's a pretty large event. I've not been to one, so.
Well, the event size varies on the scale of the trains, Phil. So of course it's a larger event.
That's true. That's true. The modular setups
I got Fran to smile.
The modular setups are most impressive. You're right. You're right. The larger the event, the larger the scale, the larger the event.
Yeah, I have one competing event for next Saturday. So, and that's Bay Area Prototype Modelers and meeting in Richmond.
That's right.
Yes, that is a conflict. Too much stuff going on to not have some conflicts.
So Phil, I've got a couple things to share here.
Go for it. This is, by the way, just open share. I'm done talking. I'm not going to say anything more.
Okay, let me see if I can get that right. So I got this email from a friend of mine, actually from Ed Loazo, something about Caltrain has an event the end of July to kick off the electric train service. So I'll put this link actually on the PCR website, but you can get tickets and I guess ride the train or something like that.
Cool.
So
Nice.
just came in the other day. And then on a different front, Phil and a lot of the O scalers know about Sierra West. He's come out with a line of 3D printed detail parts. This is replacing a lot of cast resin and things like that. Brett recently released a whole bunch of these little tractors. And these are all, again, just exquisite little 3D printed parts. They're all available in HO and O. And you guys know I like the kind of funky stuff. So this green one in the upper right, it was too cool to not buy. So pardon my cell phone pictures. It doesn't like to blow things up, but this is what you get.
Wow.
And, the detail is fantastic. These are one piece in HO. I mean, with the steering shaft, you've got, separate, I guess the rear wheels are separate left and right. So all these details are just incredible. So, one or two and you're fine. I also bought this. It was in one of my models at the contest. This is an old wall mounted drill press. And this is the HO version. I think he designs the stuff in O and then shrinks it to HO. But if you look at the HO next to the X-Acto blade, there's flutes on the drill bit. There's, gears, the teeth on the gears. It's just incredible, the detail on this stuff.
Is that thing being produced? Sorry, Earl.
No, go on.
Is that thing being produced on a, how shall I put it, high dollar pro level 3D printer, or is it one that's available to us ordinary slobs?
I don't know. It's whatever Brett has in house. So yeah, I know him and he's kind of OCD. So he experiments a lot and plays with things. I have no idea what he prints these on, but the detail is just incredible. These things, so again, all this stuff is in HO and O. There are a couple S scale parts, but that's not his thing. And then the final slide, I was paging through Mainline Modeler a while ago and came up with this scrapyard photo. I love the crane.
Oh,
I love all the, the OSHA approved gearing inside. I like the counterweights. It would make a heck of a model. So anyways, that's what I had.
Well, yeah, and the interesting thing is that you can see that it's straining and pulling at an angle to try to pull the stuff out of the car.
Yeah.
I mean, the interesting thing is you can actually see that there's a lot of tension on the angle that the head is at. It's not just hanging there; it's kind of trying to rip it out.
It's probably swinging the boom over or something too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, maybe.
I'm just looking. Is there? Sorry.
It looks like he's slung on some extra weight on the back of the cab to compensate.
Yeah, I love those. I've got.
Well, you know what those are? If you look at those, look at the rollers, look at the track rollers. Those are actually extra track rollers hanging on the back.
You think so?
Well, look at the track. Look at the right. Look at the front right. The one that's closest to it. It's got the same kind of holes in it going around. You can see the thing that's on the end of the track. I think that's what's hanging on the back, or 3 of those track rollers.
Could be.
Now that thing isn't steam powered, is it, Earl?
No, I think it's too small to be steam powered. And I would think, this box in front is kind of a diesel generator, for the electromagnet.
Okay.
I've got this sheepscot etched brass boom for the Jordans. And I'm almost thinking about, putting together some semblance of this thing.
Well, based on the last 3D printed pictures, it seems to me that definitely in O scale, this could be 3D printed.
Yeah, I'm sure put in HO, just deciding what the innards should look like. So that's what I've got.
Somebody'd be spending a lot of time in Tinkercad, though, designing all the parts for that thing. Oh, Lordy.
The gears go pretty quick, once you kind of know what's up, and if you can just scale them, especially in that show, just scale them bigger and smaller.
Yeah.
Shouldn't quite take a lifetime.
Can I add 3D printing? I just got the latest samples for the 73 SC-1 SP tender in HO. And we're hoping to have this available to people who are working on the conversion kit for the Bachmann 280 to a Harriman engine. And anyway, it's looking better. This one is having separate handrails that are printed rather than trying to do it all in one print. But we've got the fine handrails. We just need to figure it out how to properly attach them. The designer needs to put holes in for mounting, and we need to work that out. So anyway, just another 3D project.
The 3D printing continues to expand the possibilities for us in quite a few different scales.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a whole different category when you can print the whole body, at least HO or N, for parts that things that just, otherwise you have to be looking around on the brass used market.
Yeah.
Something that was made 20 years ago.
And I think the whole thing is that it's the volume attainability. I mean, if you stop and think about this hobby has been kind of technology making things more attainable, right? So, in the very early days, you had to build a locomotive yourself from scratch. You couldn't buy anything. And then eventually you could buy some fairly rudimentary kits and things, but you still had to build them. And then eventually you saw manufactured locomotives. But the thing about this is when you went from building from scratch, when you build from scratch, you can build whatever you want. When you get to mass production, you only have available the things that the masses want.
Yeah.
The things that are more customized, you don't get. What's really interesting about the 3D print, it's almost back to where we were, where you can have much more customization and optimization because the process enables that, right? Where, the problem is the process we've had, which, is injection molding with basically predefined, masters and the reality is that is very limiting in terms of customization, because every version you have to spend the expense on. With 3D printing, it's a lot easier. So
Yeah.
I think it's going to be transformational for the hobby.
Yeah, the other thing is that you have from this is I'm looking to work collaboratively with other people. I can't design. I just have a problem with coordination at my age, hand-eye coordination for designing. So I've had to work with doing the research and getting the people together who can do this, who are interested in it, and having a small group of consumers who are interested enough that it making it worthwhile for the guy who's doing the designing. And it's just a different way of collaborating. That you don't have to try and get some manufacturer to spend 2 years with thousands of millions of dollars in China to build a model anymore.
Yeah.
Hey, Ken, I love the rivet detail on there.
Yeah, isn't that nice?
Yeah, it'd be
I mean, this is
possible
we're
to do on
really
your own.
getting down there.
I have a question about this, Ken, and this is more generally to Fran and those others who are delving into the mysteries of 3D printing. You mentioned that, okay, you want to have some holes for handrails, separate handrails, but what I'm curious about is how dimensionally stable are these parts, once they're made, you know, I mean, you could sit there and say, okay, in the model, we're going to have a hole here, here, and here that the posts for some handrails will drop into. But how much does one depend on those holes actually being where they were called out in the, you know, in the model, the computer model of the thing? That's what I'm kind of curious about.
I'm a little worried about that too. I mean, I personally have a thing is I'm trying to figure out how I could do a brass version, a brass wire version of these handrails. Unfortunately, they're a fairly complicated bend, as you can see here.
Oh yeah.
I have to get it back a little bit there. It's not the easiest thing to do, and I'd need to find some sort of metal stanchion that would hold it up. Now, you know, obviously these were done by the Korean manufacturers when they made the all those wonderful sunset models, but for us, it's got to figure out a way to do it so that it's really very robust enough to handle the normal taking off and putting things on the track, re-railing, and so forth.
Yeah.
Just, you know, when we operate these, they're still operating toys. I want them to be, they aren't just showcase models.
Got it. Fran?
Mm-hmm.
What have you seen in terms of the dimensions after you print the thing, that dimensions shift at all such that holes wouldn't line up or stuff? Has that been an issue?
Well,
everything. Oh, hold on, Ken. I was asking Fran.
Everything that I do is pretty small. Usually no more than about 6 inches, and a lot of stuff, you know, 4 to 5 inches. So, you know, your dimensional stability will be more noticed with a larger piece. If we made this, you know, they made this thing, you know, a foot and a half long, yeah, I might start finding them. I haven't had to actually measure or to check on that stuff much. I know it's possible. Warp is more of a problem with me than linear dimensional stability. I'm sure it happens, but when we're talking about something a few inches long, you know, we're talking about hundredths of an inch.
Got it.
Now, and also, you know, the materials you can, there's dozen manufacturers making the resins and the filament, and that has more to do with it than anything, is the quality of the material that you get. I go by what I think the most people that I find, like when I was choosing, I wanted to stick with one brand of filament when I started, and I just researched you know, the popularity and the information on overall quality, and I chose that manufacturer, and that's all I buy, because even with that same manufacturer, when I switched from a gray to a black, I have to do some recalibration, either in the slicing or on the printer, to get the finest, you know, the finest detail. So I understand the question and the concern, and it's something that I just have to say I don't really know. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm saying it hasn't affected what I've been doing yet.
Thank you. Earl, you were nodding your head up and down as Fran was speaking. Did you have some thoughts?
Well, I kind of, you know, I know the filament side, not the resin side. I've, you know, printed quite a few filament parts and have had zero problem with movement over time. You know, as long as they're well designed, I agree with Fran. The most prevalent problem really is warping when you're trying to print them. But, you know, when I define holes being, 2 inches apart or something like that, and go to mate it with another part, the holes are spot on.
Okay.
And I've
I'll
solved,
tell you, my experience is the dimensional reliability of this stuff is pretty doggone accurate. In other words, if you set up in the CAD drawing that two things are going to be 30 millimeters apart between the hole centers, I can almost guarantee you they're going to be 30 millimeters apart, plus or minus, 0.0 millimeters, 0.0 something millimeters. They're really close.
They really are.
They're amazing. It's amazingly, this was, I'll do a spotlight. Let me turn off my background because you guys will see this. So this was just to give you an idea about this. There we go. So this was a frame that one of the guys in the ON30 group designed. And so this is basically a 24-foot caboose or freight car frame. And you really can't see it, but there are two holes on the sides for the pockets, for the stake pockets. And they actually print there and you can see them and they're dimensionally correct. So this was like, I think cost 30 or 40 bucks printed on Shapeways, and it prints in 5 hours on the filament printer and actually looks pretty doggone good to me.
and
So,
it's probably stronger than what you're
and
going to get from
yeah,
Shapeways.
it's really strong. I mean, it's now the other thing with these, by the way, if you do get some bend in them, the way to solve it is get a bucket and fill it up with hot water. I use tap water. We keep our tap water pretty hot, so you made it a little bit hotter, but hot water, like 130, 140 degree water, put it in there and it'll start getting soft, and then lay it out on a flat thing and put some weights on it and it'll flatten it out. But warm water with filament is all you need. I made an O-scale re-railer that's about this long. It had fingers on it and the fingers kind of moved a little bit when it printed. And I ended up putting a bucket of hot water, brought it out, laid it out and smoothed it out, and it's perfect now. So yeah, if you get any in filament, I don't know if this applies in resin, but in filament, don't put it in the oven. The 130, the minimum oven temperature was too much. Just use hot water in a bucket and just put it in for a moment or two and pull it out. And you can feel when it just will actually start to get a little flexible, and then you can flatten things out. Anyway, enough said. Sorry, I'll unspotlight myself.
I've
Ken
actually got
Adams.
some. Oh,
Yeah, Ken Adams. So they talk about warpage. What have you seen in this? Is this sample you have here nice and true?
well, they certainly got a little bit warped in the mail. They came from the Massachusetts to me. And I can't guarantee that they were in a temperature controlled environment. Right. Actually, I've got a couple of other experts looking at who are printers who are proposing some different resins for the handrails, and that might have more stability,
right,
and more resiliency. But as far as the body and shell go itself, I'd put that up as against any styrene injection as to robustness.
Yeah. It's comforting hearing you all of you speak about this. It sounds like, if I go nuts and order some 3D printed parts, that sounds like I'm not really gonna have to worry about, oh, nothing fits. Oh, it's a pretzel, etc. Oh, here comes Fran.
So this body shell, you can see this gap right here. So first, on making them, I did each hood of this center cap, each hood separate. And as the project went along, I combined the hoods in the cab into one. And when that came off of the resin printer, and it printed bottom side down, so I was just printing the two hoods and the cab as one piece on the flat glass bed of the resin printer. when it came off and cured, you see this little gap right here.
Mm.
That's not a problem. Like you say, I could do the fills thing, but what I do, because it's resin, is I just take the whole thing, put it on a filament printer glass bed, heat the bed up to 60 degrees centigrade, place my weights, whatever the little building block, the steel block weights on the ends, let it sit there and cook for 20 minutes or so, 60 degrees, and it's done. And then let it cool. I think letting it cool, annealing is a big trick too. Let it cool with the weights on. And that would then be flat down on the lower frame. So yeah, the warm water is a good trick. If you have the printer, the glass bed, I have it here, and it's always available. So that's what I use. So yeah, this is I believe it's called a C8. It's a Plymouth center cab 60 ton, which to my knowledge is not available on the market. So I'm doing this and this is HO. This is the first and only HO model that I've designed and printed. And let's see.
I like that you can read the words Plymouth on the side, by the way.
Wow, that looks great, Fran.
Yeah, thanks. I'm having fun with it. Mechanism, because in HO the cabs the hoods are so narrow, I can't get a Bachmann mechanism of any type up inside it. So we're going to try the Northwest Shortline Stanton drives, 2 of them, and they will fit because they would totally be underneath the they'll be underneath the frame. See what I have there.
Yeah. Wow.
There we go.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, I'm having fun with it, but I'm not sold on doing a whole lot of HO work.
No, that's okay. I'm glad to see that I'm more interested in this old Kaiser switcher. They used to use it sand and gravel.
That's the one.
Oh, okay. So the roof and the tops of the hoods are separate parts then.
Yeah.
All right.
There's no I would like to build them with even the 2 hoods separate, but I think what I'm finding is that some people love to build and some people love to build minimally. I love the hood tops separate in case you're going to be doing for putting weights in, for doing electronics in there, speakers, whatever, and you can get at them without tearing the whole model apart. And the roofs, for me, actually, I can just get a better quality roof if I do it separately with a different orientation on the print bed.
I'm just thinking of using canopy glue to keep parts like that.
Yeah. And it turns out I'm going to, because not able to get the Bachmann thing in there. This piece, this frame piece here, is going to have to be printed in five pieces. It's going to have to break down the side frames and the ends and the center frame. So I don't know if I have kind of like this.
You know what I just thought of, but it's not actually physically been produced yet, was Rapido is bringing out the GE 50-ton switcher. And I'm sure their hood is going to be accurately scaled narrow. Unfortunately, it's probably $200. You don't want to just blow on a.
Ah,
Hey, friend, I liked your Tinkercad screen. Are those
Yeah.
different versions of the thing? You know, like you had the inverted?
Oh, yeah, yeah. You know, the item gets so complex as you're getting about halfway through it, that the danger of screwing up one of your pieces is, so anytime I'm going to do I'll just call it a reoperation.
You save a part off, kind of off the work plane?
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
I guess this piece here, I mean, that's when I'm kind of getting ready to assemble, because first I design the piece, you know, flat down like that, where I can have better control over the details.
Sure.
And then as I'm getting, you know, halfway through and I've got something like this done, I don't want to mess with that without a good backup.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Tinkercad is not like Fusion 360, where you can go back to any move you made. Or you can, but it can get very confusing. In Fusion 360, you can just pick from a sort of like a spreadsheet to go back to move number 1265. Tinkercad, you're doing it kind of by memory. And also, once you close the file and you reopen it, you can't go back at all. So I'll always grab a piece, you know, like this, and come on, help me here. And
Yeah, I tend to do the same thing, because if you use Tinkercad, you know, you group and ungroup, and you can really get yourself in trouble when you're doing that.
Yeah, right now it's kind of piece only, but I just duplicated this piece here so I could start working on that and leave the other piece somewhere off to the side where I'm not gonna. That's like this here. This is something that I had done and just haven't messed with. For that same reason, I put them together and then I had to do some other kind of adjusting, and I put this aside so I could go back to it if I screwed up. Right about this size of density is where Tinkercad really starts slowing down.
Yeah,
So
it's really pushing the limits of what it can do.
yeah, but all you do is you take a piece like that, select it, copy it, open a new Tinkercad file with a new name, and say, just name it, you know, Plymouth C8 body or Plymouth C8 cab, and continue operating on just that piece in another file. And this would be then kind of like my backup file or my archive file.
Keeping each component as a separate file, and
Yeah, and
yeah.
then you can start, when you're really getting down near the end, you can bring them together in another separate file to keep Tinkercad moving a little bit more smoothly.
Yeah. You have to think like a manufacturer these days, unfortunately.
That's unfortunately, that's kind of the fun of it. It's the most stimulating thing I've done since.
Well, the best way to always think about technology is purely a lever that extends the capabilities of the human that's wielding it. I mean, whether, you know, any tool you have, that's basically the function of a tool, is it in some ways accelerates or, you know, multiplies the effect of the human being. And the thing about these CAD tools, and that's the same way, if you've got the knowledge, you can use it to do things that are amazing, but you have to be able to use the tool.
Yeah.
No different than a hammer or a drill or any other tool. I mean, we think about those because they're relatively simple to use, but the same thing applies. Once somebody knows how to use the tool, you get incredible leverage of your abilities in terms of the multiplication effect. And, you know, you see what Fran does. I mean, what Fran's doing now, 20 years ago, you'd have to be a large company to do. Now you can do it as an individual if you understand the tools and know how to use them. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And if you have the patience and the time and the wherewithal to learn something like Fusion 360, you can probably do a lot better than than you can with Tinkercad, a lot better than I can. It's good enough for me. If I had to go to Fusion 360, that would be my sole hobby, my sole thing to do. And I, probably wouldn't be enjoying it as much, or I wouldn't have time for other models, for modules and layouts and such.
The
I just
only
want-
one
Okay,
that I've
okay.
found that I can master is the one that allows me to set this up as in actual programmatic code as opposed to drawing.
Okay, so I'm gonna change it, put something up that's a little different. So not 3D printing yet. So this is a product by Victorian Model Railroad, the New Creations Victorian Model Railroad, long name for the company. It's actually a Southern Pacific, and this is an HO. I did it in HO because I'm doing this as a build and take at the convention in August. So this is actually a part way through picture I just took, but trying to build this in a way that uses techniques that you can demonstrate in a 2-hour session. So I show it to you. It's kind of interesting. Everybody's going. The one decision I've come to is I don't like the doors at all. I just actually they're not glued in place. They're just propped in place. And this actually needs all of the strip wood trim on it, etc. So, taking a whole bunch of pictures of kind of the build process. This is kind of the kit. Ended up doing a removable roof, which wasn't part of the original package, and trying to put some level of framing inside so it kind of looks cool. So that was a cool little kit. And it's really interesting to try to figure out how do you build this in 2 hours. So for example, if you look at the roof here, the roof actually takes the most time because you've got to cut the roof pieces, glue them on each side. Then you've got to put the roof together. Then you've got to put this actually doesn't have the piece on the top yet. And then you have to paint the roof and then finish it. So the roof is actually, from a time perspective, one of the longer components to build because it's got wait time. What we're doing is we're going to pre-stain the wood with brown. What you can do is do the wood graining and then do touch-up staining with black on the outside and on the floor. And then this is just dry brushed, and I haven't done any weathering on it, but I think it's starting to look pretty cool compared to a lot of the things that you see that people do. Any comments or thoughts or make sense?
I think it's looking pretty good, Phil. The thing that stood out for me right away were the doors.
Yeah, the doors just don't fit. So what I like to,
they're too thick, and they're usually, the doors weren't made from the siding. A lot of times
the siding, exactly. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it both ways, because this is intended for people to say, hey, you can build this kit, by the way, if you look at the price on it.
Yeah, $20.
The price on it's $20. By the way, the whole kit is, you see all the materials in the kit in this picture, which is really interesting. It's basically a sheet of wood here that's cut. By the way, my comment back to Alan, who runs the company, is to cut these gussets in this space right here. So you've got a couple of roof gussets, because the roof is really easy to make removable. And for a small building like this, it's kind of cool. And by the way, the other thing that was interesting here is I made the decision, I only use canopy glue, except for the roof, the felt, which he gives you in the kit. This is kind of a felt material. It has to be painted to look good. When you paint it, actually doesn't look good. I just dry brushed it with some black acrylic, because he called for airbrushing, but obviously at a convention, you won't have an airbrush. But other than that, doing that with tacky glue, all the rest of it was done with the canopy glue. And I have to say, I think it works really well. And when you look at the cost of buying one for $3.50, you could probably build 20 of these kits with one tube of canopy glue. One $3.54 tube of canopy glue. I just like the way it finishes. So anyway, and
Phil,
then go ahead.
So are you are you going to buy these kits and bring them to the convention? Or the company gonna
What we're
send them to
doing
you or whatever?
is you order them online, you order them on the convention site, and they add on, so basically the way it is, he's giving a discount, but I think the convention is going to add on the amount of the discount back and a handling fee for processing. I don't know how much they add
Yeah.
back on.
And yeah, well, what I was
And
getting
then
at,
they'll all be shipped to the convention as a block.
yeah, okay, so you're not gonna be opening the kits and doing any pre-staining or anything?
No, but actually Alan, the guy who makes the kits, Alan's actually going to pre-stain all the wood before he packages it. He does a pickling process. He says, I figure have him do that because that's the thing that takes the most time to me. When I built this kit, one of the things I was looking at was what's the time domain on each action. Because think about building this in 2 hours, and I want to have somebody build it so it looks like this in 2 hours. Staining the wood, because when you stain the wood, you've got to put it under a block of wood and let it sit to dry flat. If you just let it dry, it'll curl. Even if you do both sides, I found it doesn't work well. It only works, you put a block on it and then let it sit for 2 or 3 hours, and then it does flat. You can't do that in a clinic. But what I did find was, like, if you look at the front steps here, hang on, if you look at the front steps here, there's kind of the little bit of tearing it. These are a little thick. I didn't get the cuts as deep as I wanted. They look better in person where you have the individual board cuts. That was all done after the initial staining. And then what I did was I just took a little bit of black, ink stain with black and just marked wherever it was cut and kind of just washed the sides with that very lightly. And the net result is it doesn't get that wet. So you don't have to let it dry the same way before you start to assemble it. So
Now, dry brushing, you mentioned dry brushing, Phil. That's a way to get away from the warpage problem also, right?
absolutely. Yeah. And all the sides. And, the cool thing about this is, and this is kind of the technique stuff, is if you take a wall like this, what you do is you turn it upside down and you start dry brushing from the bottom up. So you put more paint on what's now the bottom, which becomes the top, which is kind of how the building weathers. So, it's kind of like that Dr. Benz, they tell you to turn it upside down when you put the rust on it, kind of the same way when you dry brush. And then, there's, I don't know if anybody's bought those Army painter brushes, but I mean, I think they're pretty essential tools. There's a company called the Army Modeler, or
Yeah.
Army Painter, that's it. And they actually sell on eBay these really fine bristle round dry brushing brushes. And they're really nice, about $20 for a set of 3 or 4 of them. And they work pretty well. So I want to show that. And then the other thing I wanted to show, I don't know if you've shown this because you come back to kind of the 3D printing. So, I'm doing this harbor scene on a module.
Well,
So it's got
I just want to make one comment, is that when we look at models of building structures or even railroad equipment, what we see is the top.
Yep.
When we look at it on their layout. So that really needs to be, like sort of the outstanding piece of modeling almost.
Yeah. And what will happen with this, by the way, is that this, this gets painted and then it'll get a lot of weathering on it, a little bit of weathering down here. Because this is a shed, there's nothing on the roof. I mean, I've actually got the prototype photos. I mean, there's no stove or anything like that. So it's a fairly basic roof. But anyway, so this was, this is on a module. This is the two areas that you can see they link together. This is a car float, and then there's a tug here to work on the car float. And then over here, this is the fuel pier. You see it over here. And this is kind of a couple of different views of it. When I put this together, the thing I decided I wanted to do was I wanted to light the lights on the boat, on the fishing boat and the tug. The company, this is Frenchman River Model Works. This is an O scale. The ships come with basically beads for the lights. And I thought that just didn't look very good. So I started working on this, and what you've got here is actually each one of these is a 3D casting that Fran printed for me. So this is actually the two boats. The top here of the mast, this is actually a round piece. The side guy wires actually carry the power up to the LED at the top of the mast on this one. but both of them have these little printed, these are actually 3D printed in clear and then painted with about 3 coats of primer and then covered over here with brass paint, over here with, I think it was some stainless steel or something, paint from True Color. But what I wanted to show you is these guys here on the mast. So these illuminate. You kind of, I think, saw that on the, hang on this picture, you can see, because it's a single barge, you have the 2 top lights, so the 3 lights are illuminated. So the way this was made is each one of these is an individual casting. And I thought it was pretty interesting to see this. So this is a brass tube. It's got holes drilled in it, and the LEDs go down inside of these and go down into the tube. And then there's this hat here is actually printed as a separate piece. I mean, this whole part is, how big is it, Fran? 1/8 of an inch, maybe, a little kind of size. They are really tiny, and Fran did an amazing job at printing those. And when you look at them in person, they look really cool. So
Is it on a resin printer?
that was done on his current resin printer. I don't know. I guess the question to Fran is, did you buy the new printer?
No,
Ah, dang it.
no.
Actually, I have a
Space.
question. What is a good filament printer to start with?
So I don't know what the current version is. I bought an Ender 3, which is Creality is the name of the company. I think it's pretty reasonable. When they seem pretty reasonable, I don't know. There are 2 or 3 of them that are pretty good for the
Yeah.
filament, on the filament side.
Yeah, Ender 3 Pro is,
Yep.
I think it's under $200 now.
Yeah, I paid like $212 shipped to my house, including a kilogram of fiber filament, and that was 4 years ago. So I'm sure it's probably, the same price or less now.
If I'm recommending, an Ender, a Creality printer or entry-level printer, I'd go with the Ender 3 version 2, which is a bigger processor.
Yep.
Big deal, a 32-bit processor, but it's all that's needed. Better screen and a little easier to do. And I would not recommend trying to jump into the auto leveling stuff until you've printed for 6 months or a year, because you won't learn the basics, and things will get complicated and kind of get out of hand easily.
I have some stuff to share when we've wrapped this one up.
Go for it, Dave.
All right. You'll see over on my iPad camera here, Ed Holm, it's his fault. I have dipped my toe in the dark side. This is the scale I typically model in. There's your NMRA gauge. And as you can see, I'm in trouble. My the genesis of this was it 2 Christmases ago? I put my HO trains on the floor around the Christmas tree, and the attack of the dust bunnies did its usual thing, and it was just a nightmare trying to keep it running. So I said I need to get something larger, and I measured under, the railroad has to run under a bookshelf because the tree's up against the bookshelf. So nope, the big stuff, the garden railway size stuff won't fit, and so that drives me to either O or S. And I ended up saying, well, because of my burgeoning involvement with the Alameda County gang, and particularly the O scale guys, where I'm helping with the DCC issues they've been having, Phil can attest to that. I started looking hard at O scale and Christmas trains, and here's some of the gear that I've gotten. eBay has been my friend, but I'll tell you one thing, you don't get into O scale to save money. Oh, God. Here's Atlas, handle it carefully, Atlas S8, SW8, right? And this was very lightly used. It's been weathered, but I had to tear it all apart. It was sold as a 2-rail DC. Somebody put a DCC into it, and so I tore that all out, rewired and cleaned it up, put in LEDs instead of incandescent lamps, and I think it may be ready for service, although I still have to learn a lot about O-scale couplers because it's confusing with Lionel couplers and Atlas couplers and KD couplers, and some of my best friends are couplers. So that stuff is all up in the air, and I'm still working on learning how to do that. But the other piece of motive equipment is this thing, which is another Atlas product. It's an old WDT industrial switcher, and it was not running very well. And I realized to my disgust and horror that these locomotives have plastic gears slipped onto the axles under pretty high pressure. And you know what happens whenever you do that, which is after some period of years, the gears, the plastic splits, and they either spin, and it's no longer, the gear teeth aren't lined up right because it's split and spread out. And I realized I was in trouble, but then I also realized that you can take, I had another one, I've been scrounging junked ones on eBay, and there's a couple of little gears up in the top part of the gear train that are the same ones that are on the axle. And so I've managed to get a full set of good gears on this thing, weathered it, put in windows, put in DCC, put in LED headlights, and I think it may be suitable. I'll try to test run it over at Pleasanton, and we'll see how it does, because I just only have a 3-foot long test track here, and you can't really see how it's going to run for a long period. But then this leads me to the other fine pieces of rolling stock. This is this prototype is a fascinating prototype. And the thing here is it's lighted. There's LEDs all along the side of the car, and Lord help me, the reindeer's nose turns red. What I have to figure out though is this 3-rail car runs off of AC to do the lighting, and will it accept DCC power to run the lighting without destroying it? And then
so generally, my understanding with most of that stuff is that lights will run on AC or DC.
Mm-hmm.
And what you basically have to do is figure out what the voltage is
right
through the light, and then make sure you match that.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll have to putz around. I've written to, I think it's MTH in that case, and saying, hey, what about this car? I've heard nothing. Then here's another fine piece of prototypical equipment with a prototypical load. This is a Lionel dump car, which you actually could activate and dump stuff on the layout. But in this case, Lionel provided it with a bunch of wrapped presents. So, and my wife has ordered another Lionel boxcar with a Christmas theme. So I've also got a little 2-wheel Atlas caboose in Union Pacific. And then here is another scrounge caboose from eBay, which I'm going to have to do a lot of work on because I want to get it lighted and with some sort of Christmas lighting also. But so far, you'll notice the black paint on the inside. As usual, these yellow plastic cars, the plastic is really translucent, and any light in the inside comes right through the side of the car. So I'm working on this, but I also I'm going to have to learn more from the O-scale guys on couplers and trucks and stuff. But man, a pair of trucks with electric pickup are $30 a pop in O-scale. eBay hunting around. So I'm not planning to get much past what you see here. Maybe another car, this 2 pieces of motor power, a couple of cabooses, and then fool around with trying to get lighting and stuff in them for Christmas. But that's my little delving into a larger scale than HO. I am an HO modeler, but HO just doesn't work under the Christmas tree, and I dearly want my wife to have a really nice Christmas train for her my target is Christmas this year because her grandnieces will be here for Christmas, and want to have a train up and running. And of course, with this big to me in HO, this big UPS S8, it's got bells and horns and all that neat stuff. And so I'm excited to be working on this stuff. That's my modeling madness.
Brings back memories.
I hope they were good
Oh,
ones.
yeah. Well, look, my father and I emigrated from England in the November of 1949.
Mhm.
And for Christmas in 1949, he had found a used Lionel 262 or 242,
Mhm.
027 set. And we set that up in a woman we were living with, the older lady, her Christmas tree. And it was a very interesting time.
Yeah. The very first model train I remember is my dad had a Lionel on a board, I think down the basement. This would have been 1959, 1960 maybe.
Yeah.
But that didn't last, and various things happened after that. But I'm very happy with HO. But for this purpose, this O scale I think hopefully will serve very well, and I'll continue to lean on the help of the O scalers over there in Pleasanton in terms of making it run right. And I also want to run it at Pleasanton on the O scale. Why not? So anyway, that's what I've been working on. Who else has got something to share?
That was kind of gonna be my comment, was that if you buy 3-rail cars, eventually, if you just want to run it at home, it may make more sense to have a 3-rail engine and just do 3-rail.
No.
But having it as a Christmas train to run at Pleasanton would be really cool.
Oh yeah. No, get dual use out of it. It shouldn't.
Yep.
That way I can get use out of it at the
Right.
Pleasanton layout.
Yep.
And provide cheap laughs to the
Well,
members.
and if everybody's not aware of it, the 9th and 10th of December, the Great Train Show will be at the Pleasanton Fairgrounds. So great opportunity to run a Christmas train on the 9th and 10th.
And as a side note, it's amazing if you run an HO and you go to pick up an O scale engine, 2-rail O scale engine, and it's like you pick it, you put your hands on it and you lift, and it doesn't move, and you grunt a bit and lift harder and it doesn't move. My God, Phil has a big GE 6-axle locomotive. It takes 2 men and a boy to get it up out of its box.
Yeah, that's what you don't realize, is that there's a duality of weight. That one is that, clearly it's 7.8 times the weight because it's 7.8 times bigger. But also it turns out a lot of things that are plastic in HO turn out to be metal in O scale, and they end up just getting a lot more weight. So
the whole long hood on this UP unit is metal. I'm sitting there and trying to get it open to get it stuff, and it's like, my God, it's all metal. The cab isn't metal, but the frame, the long hood, and it's just, what a boat anchor.
For those of us around in 1950, plastic wasn't all that prevalent.
No. Well, and the plastic and the plastic they were using was basically derived from Bakelite.
Yeah.
It was a whole different kind of plastic than what we think of as injection molded plastics today. And yeah, it was it was not nearly as resilient. It broke a lot easier. I mean, I don't you remember that when you broke a chunk off of your Lionel locomotive and you looked at it, there was like this really coarse plastic inside that Bakelite type of plastic or whatever it was. Yeah, that back then plastic just wasn't the same as it is today.
That didn't come in until the mid-50s, the good plastic.
So
good plastic, is there such a in retrospect, that's an oxymoron.
can't recall the details of this video right now, but I do remember being fascinated at the history of Bakelite from from its invention.
Yeah.
So if you're into sitting around on YouTube, search it out, and a pretty interesting background.
Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Happy, have a great time next Saturday down in Roaring Camp. At
We
least
will.
you won't get flooded out this time.
That's true.
Going to be fun.
Okay. Well, I think we'll probably call it a day, unless there's other things. Folks, anybody else want to share anything, or go ahead and call
I
it?
just want to do a little bit of a plug. Something someone suggested to me a couple years ago, and it really paid off, and that is, don't be afraid or to pursue collaboration. There's some things I really don't want to do anymore. I don't want to do airbrushing and certain assemblies, and I spend a whole lot of my time doing the 3D printing and the designing part. So collaborating with someone else who does the things that you're just not quite as interested to do can really pay off. I started a couple years ago with Kevin Spady in Southern California, and he builds some of my models, and oh, there we go, and sends them back to me. I give him what he needs for his models, but when I have the time, which most of the time I have the time for collaboration. So if people have ideas, you're welcome to just talk it over, try it with me or with anyone. On this photo is Calvin Witt right in the middle there. And he's a good collaborator also.
Yeah, I was going to say the collaboration is actually a great way to go in this hobby, because this is the YSL, the last run, sadly, but it was a giant collaboration between a bunch of very good modelers, and it's a very unique model.
It's one of the great advantages of modern social media, that we're able to put together collaborations across the country without even seeing each other or anything like that. And it's sort of nice.
This would not have been possible without the internet, because this is how I met these guys.
Yeah.
Of course, the other thing is as Ken says, you're not seeing these guys, and considering how some of us look, that's probably a plus.
True.
Yeah, but
The
I
other
mean,
thing-
we may see each other like over a Zoom session, but
Right.
we're not physically, having to. In the
Well,
last 4 years, that's helped. Believe me.
Yes.
It is the interesting question. If you look at clubs over time, membership changes. And so you may have a railroad that's a club where the vast majority of the railroad was not built by the people that are currently members. That's very unusual in a modular group, because modular groups tend to be more personal, et cetera. And I mean, what's interesting about the Yosemite short line is, of the original builders of the layout back in 2003, 2004, I think there's only one or two people still involved. So of that picture, the majority are people that have gotten involved subsequently, which makes it a lot more like what I'll call a physical instantiated club than a typical modular group, where they kind of come together for a time and then go away because people take their modules and go do other things. It's kind of been maintained. It'll be interesting to see, how that goes going forward, whether it's incorporated into more of the regular modular group, the ON30 group, or stays as a separate entity. And I think that's a discussion that group's really banding about, because it's hard to get support for both, it turns out.
Yeah, the main problem with it is it's just falling apart.
Well, yeah, that's the other problem, is that it's old, and it was not built. It was built with two problems. One, it was built at a time when people didn't understand what it takes to build modules that could be set up 5 times a year for 5 or 10 years. You stop and think about that. that's 50 times, 10 years, 5 or 6 times a year is 50 or 60 times that module is going to be taken out, set up on legs, bolted into place, stressed. And, you know, and if you build it out a 1/4 inch Luan and kind of the way a lot of us build stuff, it just falls apart. And that's part of what's happening. So
It wasn't designed to last this long either. It was designed to
right,
last.
it was exactly, and it was designed lightweight. So
Our
I mean,
club in Santa Rosa, we used 1/2 inch ply, 1x4 reinforcing blocks because some of us had had experience with the problems with modules not holding up.
Yeah.
So we had learned the lessons and built stuff that lasted for a long time, but it was lessons hard learned.
yeah, I think the thing with that the ON30, the CCC, the ON30 group learned, and this is pretty much even before I started joining it, is that trading off weight for resiliency is a good idea. In other words, saying I can build a module and it's going to weigh 20 pounds. If you make it weigh 25 or 30 pounds, you can exponentially increase its lifespan. And, you know, especially as long as you're putting it in boxes or a frame, it just doesn't matter if it weighs a couple of 3 pounds more. And so I think that was, I think to me, the big realization was, you know, build them a little bit heavier duty and they'll last longer. And then just the construction techniques that, you know, quite frankly, building a module at Dave Gill's shop is different.
Yeah.
Between us. I hate to say it, but it just is.
The one thing that I think we all have to learn is keep in mind is that things change.
Yep.
Nothing lasts forever.
No.
And the problem with the YSL is trying to find a place to put it.
Yep.
Is really hard because nobody wants to just take something. They want to have it supported after they've taken it. Right.
Yeah.
So in other words, I'm a venue and you say, I'd like to put this module, you know, sectional railroad into your venue and have it there. The next question that people ask is, well, who's going to maintain it, run it, and keep it running, et cetera? And that becomes a huge commitment to try to get people to commit to. I know, just like the Sierra guys with the NMRA exhibit up in Sacramento, it's a big commitment for them. Somebody has to go in there literally almost every day or every other day to do maintenance and check it out and make sure it's working.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the other problem with layouts and what you do with them is, you know, people want to see trains run, and if you want to have trains run, somebody's got to be there actually taking care of it.
Yeah. And that's just a simple loop up there.
Yeah, and and it's a loop up there with no sidings or anything, and it's still a challenge. I mean, you know, when we went up there for one of the events, there was an issue, and David gave me the keys, said, "Can you go up and just clean the track?" And literally just opening the doors and cleaning the track to get it to run again.
Yeah.
Because it's so.
Anyway,
Oh well.
Is
Problem,
anyone,
gentlemen, it's been a pleasure.
okay, is anyone going to Silicon Valley Lines this afternoon? Open house.
wasn't planning on it.
I've got other tasks I have to take care of. I
Mm.
would like to, but
Okay,
I'll catch you next show.
thanks a lot,
Cool.
guys.
Everybody have a good one. We will see you all in 2 weeks. Hopefully see some or most of you next week in Roaring Camp. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Hey, Phil, can you hang on for a minute after everyone leaves?
Sure.
Take care, all.
Take care.